It's time for Q&A in the Kitchen. It's a podcast and YouTube series where tattoo artists and piercer cover some of the more common questions we're asked by those who collect tattoos and piercings. Brought to you in part by Skin Kitchen Tattoo, the Axiom Body Piercing Studio, and Def Before Decaf. Usual crew today, the Rat Pack of the
Same
Axiom
boring
skinhead
faces
thing.
you've gotten used to over all these years.
Yep, just different
Hi,
clothes.
guys.
Yeah,
Jack,
well, I've probably
Jack,
worn this.
Jimmy,
before.
I'm Wesley, and DaVo. If
Bad.
you're just now catching up, but go watch
Well,
old
you know,
episodes.
basically,
Yeah, if you're just now watching your first episode, shame on you.
Well, whatever.
You
Welcome to
should-
the show.
No, anyways.
yeah, welcome here.
I'm Jack. I own Skin Kitchen. This is Wesley. He was my first hire, and I've been my right hand guy since I opened the new shop here. And this is Jimmy, one of my best brothers ever. Met him forever ago, and he joined us
Over a decade in Sturgis.
Yeah, and so you've been here over a year now. Or about
I've been here over a year, yeah.
And this is DaVo. He's been with Skin
The
Kitchen pretty
infamous.
much since the beginning, about a year or
Even
so
before.
after, back in 98, 99.
October of 99 is when I moved out of the old studio.
There it is. So,
But how long has Axiom been around?
Since May of 1994, technically, as
When
a
was your first
separate,
storefront?
complete storefront, May of 95.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go.
I
Yeah.
think I might close to being Creative Images, of course, is going to be the oldest, but I think
you're
I'm
the
right
longest-
in there in the second with the longest operating.
Mm-hmm.
Body
But you've been
art
piercing longer than
place.
anyone else in the
Yeah.
Des Moines area, am I
Yeah,
right?
the state for the most part.
The state, yeah.
And I think
All
Skin
of
Kitchen
Iowa.
is probably, Creative Images has number one.
And then you guys.
That's Sherry,
you guys
right?
Probably number 2.
I think we're number 2 because there was
Creative
only
Images is Sherry, right?
Right. There was only a handful of shops open when I opened.
I'd love to
So,
get her
yeah,
on
I
this
think
show
we're
sometime.
probably
We
number
had her
2.
on.
Oh, no,
Have
no,
you?
no, no, no. You know who has number
I
2?
missed it.
Dan, Yankee Doodle Dandy here.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
okay,
right
yep.
before you
He
guys.
was
Yankee
open
Doodle.
before us,
Yep.
but
And
so
I've talked about having him on the show. I've talked to him.
We
about it,
should.
but I keep
Really need to.
dropping the ball on.
He'd be great.
He's so busy between
awesome. Well, yeah.
between the tattoo shop, which I guess he's there only on Wednesdays.
I'm not sure.
I don't
but
know.
He's a
That's
bicycle
what
guy
I was
too,
told.
though.
Oh,
But he
really?
owns Itchy Bike, and he's
Oh.
really big into like building
Yeah.
custom cruisers and
Very
electric
cool.
bikes and other things.
So
and that's
he's
kind of
busy,
his
busy
passion.
dude.
That's
Plus,
awesome.
he's a father,
Right.
and those kids are getting a little older now.
Yeah.
and-
Yeah.
Well, we need to put a bug in his ear and
Yeah,
maybe
definitely.
try to
I'd
steal
love to
him
have
for an
him
hour
over.
or two and
That'd be
pick
awesome.
his
'Cause
brain.
he,
That'd be
you know,
awesome.
he pushed the broom around at Hardy's shop
Right.
for a while.
Like I
and
was
can't
be
think of the
really
name of it.
fun
Yeah,
to pick
that'd
through
be
his
cool.
brain a bit and yeah, good guy.
Okay, so today's question was submitted. We're still continuing with the viewer questions. How do you help heal an older tattoo that was done too deep so it now feels textured and raised? Submitted by Georgeasauruss, which we've decided could mean either it's George, he's either a big guy, or it's George and he has a large vocabulary.
Or they're from
Right.
Georgia. With a
Or-
lot
Or
of
from
vocabulary.
Georgia and they have
Or
a large vocabulary.
Maybe they had a grandfather that was named George, and they
Maybe.
really, they're respecting him and using
Yeah,
that name.
could be.
I could go on for hours.
Anyway,
But yeah,
So vitamin E.
So bruises, scars are really weird. I mean, depending on how you got them, if they're a stretch mark, if it's a burn, if it's an incision, if it's, all these things, and how long you've had it can determine how ready that skin is to be tattooed as well. Burn scars, in
Are
my
the toughest.
experience, it really messes the skin up and can be really tough and can be years for that skin to be ready for even somewhat,
Anything.
So yeah, it kind of depends on what you want to get and how bad the scar is, how long it's been there, and all that. So some scars may be pretty bad, but depending on what you're getting, it's not going to really affect the tattoo much.
Right.
So
No.
it's going to be fine, and it can be all the way the other way too. If you wanted something very, very detailed, but you've got a really horrible scar, it could be rough.
But if you've already got a tattoo and it's raised up, there's not a lot you can do about it, and it's
Right.
not from being too deep.
No, right?
as they
Yeah,
say.
it's an overworking
It's
situation.
a little bit of overwork, right?
So yeah, you poke enough holes in the same piece of skin, it's not going to be able to put itself back
No, it's
together
gonna fall
right, and
apart.
it's going to scar.
Yeah.
Your body's going to go, okay, bring in some extra skin because
Right.
this is a mess.
Yeah.
And
Like
so
you
if you're in that situation, I would say vitamin E is supposed to, I think, repair
to an extent.
Yeah, it helps.
Or maybe check with a dermatologist.
Right. Go to your dermatologist and tell them about it, and they might have some sort of special stuff that you might not might not be able to get somewhere else. But they're going to know everything about that, scar, and know what, scientifically, and what's going to work and how it's going to work.
Even sometimes though, it's not a scar, like we were talking about earlier. I got
It's a
a
reaction.
tattoo that for whatever reason, if I go get too much sun or if
Humidity high or
I
something
take
like
in
that,
too
weather.
much stuff that's got that I'm allergic to, or I'm around something that I'm allergic to a lot or whatever.
Selfish.
Yeah.
Some of the the red, the tail on that devil spray can.
Yeah.
The tail is red. It'll puff up.
Yep.
Like a bee sting or a mosquito bite.
And that's interesting when you said the allergies thing. It is kind of like an allergic flare up, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
sometimes you have allergies and your nose is running and messing with you, and other times it's totally
there's-
fine. Your tattoos can kind of do that as well.
Now, my guess is there's something in that old pigment
right.
Yeah.
that when it
Triggers
reacts
it.
to skin or reacts to something you eat or something
Yeah,
that's in your system,
exactly.
it triggers a chemical reaction
Right.
that causes issues.
Yeah.
Well, and after time, it stopped doing it as much because it got, I guess, whatever
And
amount.
like an immunity.
Yeah, whatever the
to
amount
it.
of whatever was in there, it's either pushed it out or it's got an immunity to it.
Right.
Your body
But-
builds up a tolerance.
Like
for
back
it.
in the
Yeah.
day, I don't know if you remember this or not. There was a big problem with reds
Mm-hmm.
because the stuff they put in red, if you went like near old broken thermostat, it would absorb like mercury. The red had mercury in it, or would absorb mercury from outside substances.
And if you go on the
I remember
internet,
being
it's
a big
still
issue,
out
but I
there
never
and
knew
people are
exactly.
talking about it.
Right.
It's
I
a
mean, it
modern
hasn't.
thing.
It hasn't really been around, I think, for as bad.
Well, in the
lately
tattooing-
because the pigments have gotten a lot better and more
Right.
regulated.
Well,
but back
back-
in the day, it was a
Well,
problem.
Back in the day, even like before back in the day, like back in the day, yeah, right, I'm going way back.
Like seats in a Cadillac.
You could only get so much red tattooed into you at a time because it was
it was
toxic.
harmful. Yeah.
So you and your body can only handle so much at a
Well,
time. So yeah,
Back
reds
in
have
the
always kinda
day,
been
some
a
of the
little
ink
funky.
companies got in trouble because they were selling like silkscreen ink,
Oh right.
and it had it has a very minute size particles in it, but it's plastic in it.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
makes it adhere and turn, solid and thick. But that was they were using it as tattoo ink, before they knew any better. And
And
back
I
in the
think-
day when you tattoo somebody with that crap, like they would swell up and like it would get thick.
Well, and I think that really came out as a big, I don't know, scandal or whatever,
Right.
when people went to get it laser removed. So if you've ever burnt
yeah, because
plastic,
it won't break it. Yeah, it won't break it down.
yeah, it's basically like a plastic in you, like a petroleum-based
Yeah.
substance.
yeah.
So when the laser would hit it, it would basically
Just
turn
melt.
black, and
Now you got
does
a
what
big,
like a plastic
nasty
does.
scar.
And and I think that's what really kind of made the industry go, oh.
Well, back in the day,
That's not
That's
cool.
not
Something's
good.
important.
Europe was way more. They have a lot more regulations on a lot of stuff than we do.
Yeah, the
like
EU.
with
Sure.
tattooing,
Oh,
the European Union or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So Dermaglow is a European ink,
Yep.
and it was one of the first ones to have like every ingredient listed on the label, the batch numbers, so you can, if you had a problem, you notify them, they go back, they trace that batch, find it, they do a test on it, see if something's foreign in it or blah blah blah. And back when I worked at City Limits with Scotty, he was so about crossing T's and dotting I's that everybody in the shop, he bought the ink. Everybody in there used Dermaglow because it was the only ink that was FDA approved.
Yeah.
And had all its ingredients on it. It was traced and trackable. And like you had to write on your consent form what colors you used, what product like if it was Talon's black,
Yeah.
or if it was Pelican black, or if it was
Texas or something was like that, or there's
Yeah.
other
It's-
states that you have to write every
Yeah.
color you use.
yeah,
on
because
the
if there's a
sheet and
problem, they're
everything.
trying to chase back a problem.
Which is
to find
smart,
it.
but
It is.
whole-
But
Yeah,
oh my
especially-
God, the work.
Especially if a batch was contaminated for
Yeah.
one reason or another, and even
Yeah.
the manufacturer was unaware of it.
Right.
You need to trace it back.
It covers
the
them.
piercing version of that is that
Like
we
you do a quick
have.
recall.
We only want to stock jewelry that's been third-party tested for purity.
Yeah. Sure.
And it's usually the American standards of testing and measuring. And without that notification, you have no idea what's in that alloy.
Right, because if it
How
has
pure it
nickel
is, what
or
have
some
you,
other bunk
you have
metal,
no
a lot of
idea.
people are allergic to it, right?
Well, it comes down to there's standards of the alloy because all they're really doing is they're buying metal bars.
Right.
And that alloy is made at a mill. Nobody that manufactures jewelry makes their own stuff.
Yeah.
They might melt gold into certain shapes. That they may work with, but they're not working with titanium. They don't have the processing to do
No,
it.
man, they're buying it.
So unless you have a third party that says exactly what's in that titanium or that stainless steel or what have you, it could be everything from what's used on motorcycle parts,
Right.
which is
Yeah,
high
true.
carbon, to motorcycle spokes to.
Well, a lot of people have nickel reactions.
Yes,
And nickel is
that-
a very cheap
the
metal, and they mix that in.
Nickel is one of the things that gives stainless steel the ability to polish it so high.
Right.
But see, the thing about it is kind of like, yeah, there's that, but also stainless steel contains lead. Mm-hmm. It all comes down to, you know,
there's so many.
trying to get the purity down as much as possible and then having a good finish.
Huh.
Yeah.
And that can cause problems with what
Reactions.
rejection.
All kinds
mainly-
of stuff. If
mainly.
you have a reaction, like
Yeah,
if you have an
it-
allergic reaction to a piercing, oh my God, that's
Yeah.
a deep tissue thing, and you're having reaction down in there, you could cause some problems.
So, but you're told
I would
if
imagine.
you are having an issue with a piercing, an infection, or a reaction like that, you're not to take it out because it will encapsulate the infection.
Depends, because an allergic reaction will usually react within a few days.
Okay.
Okay.
Unlike an infection, which you're going to show signs of trauma.
Yeah.
And that's going to last anywhere from 3 to 5 days, and then
Okay.
it'll start to subside. An infection will flare up usually weeks afterwards, and it's usually after. Most people, you talk to them, they've got an infection, they know the event that
Yeah.
caused it.
Well, it's because it's red and they say it's infected. That was a big misconception. Like it
Yeah.
takes 72 hours for actual infection to develop and form.
Yeah.
So, like if you get tattooed on Tuesday, by Thursday you haven't washed it or properly cleaned it or hot pressed it back in the day like you used to have to do. It was red. It was swollen. It was angry. It had a lot of excess dirt and paper towel rubbings on it and whatever. And they're, oh, my arm's infected. No, your arm's not infected. You haven't had time to get infected, but you do need to wash it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Even if you've contaminated it,
Yeah.
your body's still going. The reason why it's red, the reason why it's seeping,
Right.
and all this other stuff is your body's doing what it can to fight off that infection.
trying to heal
And
it,
that
yeah.
so if it's so if you're having a reaction to the jewelry, you're going to
You're
know
gonna
that
know.
sooner
You're gonna
than
know that
you're going to
usually
have a
within-
reaction from an infection.
Usually within 24 hours.
Yeah, you're gonna know
Okay.
about that.
Because it's
good to know.
gonna swell up massively, and your body will, in some cases, almost try to grow the hole away from it. It'll also there'll be usually patches of I can't remember it, like a rash.
Yeah.
You know,
could be
it's gonna
brutal.
itch constantly. You're gonna know something is
How
right.
miserable.
Yeah, not good. Yeah, so you definitely want to make sure what metals you are or are not.
Well,
allergic
that's
to.
why you see a lot of these places. Oh, we do $25 piercings. That's because
It's
they
'cause they're
bought
paying-
a 20-cent or a 10-cent piece of jewelry from somebody that goes, "Oh yeah, this is stainless
Yeah.
steel. Where'd you get it? I don't know. We found it in a bin."
Yeah,
I got it off
Like, you know what I
Amazon.
mean? Yeah,
Seems fine.
Yeah, it'll be
Yes.
okay.
I buy these in 1,000 lots.
Right.
And it costs me $100 to get 1,000 pieces.
Right, and that's that's
I've
the
got every color you can imagine.
that's the
Right.
integrity of your piercer having someone who's pierced forever to know.
Your cheap piercings and
things,
tattoos,
yeah.
they got to stay open. They're
There's a
making money,
reason,
so
but
they
there's
got
a
it way
reason why it's
cheaper.
cheap.
Yeah, there
Yeah. Oh,
is.
yeah.
There always
There's
is.
always a reason why it's cheap.
And I don't think a lot of people understand is like even as tattoo artists and as piercers, we wear a lot of different hats that
Mm-hmm.
are behind the scene that people don't see. We learn how to properly run autoclaves. You guys don't have to do that anymore, but you know how to do it.
Oh,
if
We
you
still
had
used to have to be certified to sterilize.
Yep. And you guys have a basic knowledge of chemistry when it comes to inks and et cetera, and how to properly. You have a little bit of background in electronics because you have to learn how to run your machine correctly.
Mechanics.
You may not know the technical term for what does that doohickey,
Yeah.
but
But I
you
know
have
that
an
I do.
understanding.
Yeah,
And with piercing, it's like we have a little bit more. You know, we have metallology. You have the whole thing that I talked about with standard sterilization and et cetera. So there's a lot of things. It's like when kids are asking me, you know, what courses should I take when I?
Well,
if
you
I
still
wanna-
need first aid. You
It's
still
like
need CPR. You
first
still need
aid,
bloodborne pathogens.
CPR. You know, learn your basic, your basic things. But if you can figure out some way to take a metallurgy class in college,
That'd
or
be
even
awesome.
audit one to get an understanding of how alloys work and how they interact and et
Yeah,
cetera,
you'd be ahead.
chemistry, you're going to have a little bit more information. Plus, you know, when you suggest aftercare products, you want to look through that list of active ingredients and understand how some of those things may
Right.
cause reactions. And not everybody does that. It's like, oh, well, you know, this says everything in it. And
Basically, what you're saying is there is no substitute for experience.
no. And
At
it's-
all.
And you
No.
never stop learning.
You never stop
Yeah.
learning.
Yeah, you know that doesn't mean that someone who's been in the game of anything, plumbing, electricity,
Yeah.
building anything,
all
you
applies.
know that they can't do a good job. But you know they're going to be less likely to know what to do in a situation
Right.
that isn't normal,
Yeah.
because they haven't come across it before.
Right.
So you know that's I think some people kind of get lost in that and they compare apples and oranges and don't really understand that you know how much the time spent
learning
really
this knowledge.
worth.
Yeah.
You know, there's no substitute for that at all.
Well,
you
it's
know?
like back in the early 2000s. Everybody came out with this, oh, we're going to do no black outlines. We're going to do all color outlines, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's a terrific idea. The pigments have come a long way. Yeah, it looks great for about 6 weeks.
Yeah, right.
Then it fades off and loses that
Yep.
defining definition of what makes this the edge of the pedal and this and the shadow and the blah, blah, And they've come back to, oh, well, you do have to put some black in it. Even
Right.
if you haven't outlined it in black, there has to
Well,
be
it's all
black
about
in it.
contrast.
But you know what I'm saying? Like those new kids, and like not taking away from, I've seen people that's been in the game for a year, 2 years, 3 years that are phenomenal. It's unreal
Yeah,
what
that's
they're
what
doing.
I'm saying. Yeah.
But if you give that kid that does this fantastic realism tattoo, that's all he does. If you give him like a traditional eagle, he's like,
Yeah.
how do I do this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why
Right.
that's why experience is great, and researching your artist is so important.
Right.
Because that doesn't mean that like I said, a newer artist in the game can't do
No,
a great tattoo.
not at all.
But you want to make sure that dude's doing tattoos that you're gonna want. You know.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
and you
absolutely.
should.
Yeah.
And part of what when people ask me about portfolios, and they're like, "What should I look for?" And I go, "Well, consistency."
Yep.
But you should also look. Hey, this guy can. If this guy, if you have a particular style that you want to get, is every photo
This is
in
your
there
guy.
that style?
Yeah.
If it isn't in there, or there's no representation of that style, chances are this isn't the guy for you.
Yeah.
Right.
No matter how famous they are, or
Yeah.
what have you,
Yeah.
or what people say, or some of the great
It doesn't
work you've
take
seen,
anything away from that artist. It's
No.
just that's not his thing. Like when
or her thing.
or her thing.
Or
Well,
Me
and
and-
thank God we all tattoo different.
Yeah.
That'd
Yeah, 'cause
suck
it was
if
so
it was all
boring.
the same. You know.
Well, me and Wes do a pretty good job of covering pretty much anything you want.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some of our other guys in the shop,
Yeah.
they'll do anything you want, even with the scar stuff. Brent did 2 beautiful half sleeves on a lady who had some scarring on her arms.
Right. Oh,
And
yeah,
dude,
yeah,
those
I
are
remember that.
they're some of the most beautiful pieces you've ever seen in your life. One's black and gray, and one just has a touch of color in it. And they're 2 great representations of what we're talking about. Hopefully, we'll get those up on the
Yeah.
website. But you know what I mean? Like it all goes back to like me and Wes and Brent cover a lot of great stuff. But if somebody comes in and goes, "Hey man, I want a portrait of Clint Eastwood in Pale Rider," me, Wes, or Brent, cool, yeah, it'd be awesome. I want a portrait of my dad when he met my mom. That's a Jack Lowe thing.
Yeah.
And we all, none of us are trying to jock for positions or be impressing
No.
nobody.
No,
but
no.
we already know that for something like that, you're the guy here to do that. That's your thing.
and that's why I was saying everybody tattoos different. Everybody, no
Right.
matter what, it's got to run through their brain,
Yeah.
out their hand. So there's, no matter how hard they try to maybe, be influenced by a style and
Yeah.
try to recreate some certain things. It's never, it's always going to be
Right.
filtered through that brain
Right.
and through that hand and everything. So it's going to come out a little different. And then the more you do it, the more your style, the more your technique is going to kind of hone that
Yeah.
look of things. Doesn't mean that any of us can really, that's the fun part, is we can really do
Yes.
about anything with anything.
Yeah.
And that's what's fun for me. But at the same time, we have this way we see it.
Right.
Yeah.
And if the way we see it isn't really in line with the way you're seeing it, chances are one of us does,
Yeah.
or one of us is going to be able to pick it up. But
Right.
if we don't, man, there's
Dude,
a lot
I
of us
feel
around,
great
you know?
when I can tell a customer, hey, this is something like with the guy with the optical illusion sleeve.
Yes, I know which one you're talking about.
It was something that it's not in my wheelhouse. You know what I mean? It's off for me.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I felt uncomfortable, but I knew the guy came to the right shop because we've got great guys here. So you were tattooing. I talked to you about it. You were immediately interested in it, of course. And Wes happened to be finishing up with a customer and comes up and goes, "I love doing stuff like that." I'm like, "Well, here's your guy." So, me and Wes start tag teaming this customer and talking to him and, going back and forth. And the guy's getting the sleeve done here and he's very happy with it.
Yeah.
But it makes me feel good telling, when I got Bill, he's a very religious customer. I've tattooed the crap out of him. He's like, "Hey man, who should I get a portrait?" I'm like, "You should go see Jack. You should get a tattoo by Jack and Wesley and Brent because
right.
Yeah.
You
well,
came in and talked to me first.
you
and
should
I was
collect
so
from
happy to
everybody.
pass them over to him because you guys get along so great.
right, we just clicked. But it's that personality or that style or, there's a lot of things that come in play.
Right.
Some customers, man, they might not really do something you really want to do, but you guys are just, you hit it off. So you figure out a way to make it work, man. It's that personality. You don't want to spend 10 hours for a tattoo with somebody that you can't stand sitting next to. You know what I mean?
I have done that.
Oh, it's awful.
Yeah, it was.
So you can, if you've got a tattoo and it is somewhat scarred, it could be several things. It could be some allergic reaction, it could be overworking, and all that. So I would suggest vitamin E. Talk to your dermatologist, and all that.
And you
Right,
may
like
want to wait.
the-
Because sometimes I
Yeah,
know
it settles
that,
down.
that some
Over
of the
time.
stuff I've had
Yeah.
that it was overworked and was solid color stuff.
Yeah.
Some
Over
of
time, it started to subside.
Some
a
of we
little
talked
bit.
about
Right.
before too, like the really small lines and things you get. Like I said, shoulders are one that sometimes they tend to show up a little bit more, just because we were talking about earlier. It's a joint that's not quite the elbow, but it does work a lot. Those small ones don't really matter. It sucks for the bigger ones. You can not really always get rid of that scar tissue, but those tattoos, those areas can still be saved.
Oh, sure.
So
Yeah,
it's just
absolutely.
something like
And I
it
don't- go
sucks if it doesn't go away via dermatologist or vitamin E, but
Well, they just have the privilege of having a 3D tattoo.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
Try to
well,
try to
that's
put
why,
I've had people ask me
again,
for that.
That's why researching your artist
Yep, is
and
important.
Yeah, it's very
doing all
important.
that is very,
Very
important.
important.
And then you're way less likely to
Yep.
run into
Types of
situations.
inks and stuff like we were talking about earlier.
Right.
I think we covered everything, but
Yeah.
I screwed up and didn't start the sound. It's my fault. We did about 15 minutes beforehand.
Yeah.
Did we cover the fact that what creates that situation where they feel like they're overworking?
Yeah,
their,
a lot of times
Yeah.
people think it's depth. You know, oh, they went too deep, and it's
Rarely
hardly ever that. I mean, to go too deep, you have to like try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to understand, especially a lot of us, we're working for rotaries, and they are direct drive, but still, it's just a little motor. And a lot of times we're pushing several needles. It's like taking your salad fork and trying to push it into your arm. You know,
Yeah.
Well,
you know, you have
you
to
can
push
do it.
so
And back in
yeah,
the
you
day-
can,
Yep.
but you got to try.
And back in the
Yeah.
day with the old needle bars, needle setups, and traditional machines, coil machines, which a lot of people still use, which is
Yeah.
nothing wrong with
They
that.
have a-
you can get a hook or a burr
Sure.
on one of those needles,
and it'll
Yeah.
catch.
and it'll
So-
catch, and it'll cause that raised up
That
scar
and a lot
tissue
of coil
kinda look.
machines, if they're not set up right or being used right,
Yeah.
they hit the skin irregularly, so it's
Yep.
causing a lot of extra trauma. And
And if you're not experienced with your coil machine, it could. I mean, your rotary machine, it
It'll
can.
do the same.
oh
thing.
yeah,
the
yeah,
same thing.
absolutely. Again, so I made this point earlier, but DaVo screwed it all up. so it's, you know, if you've ever taken a piece of paper and had a needle and you just kind of start poking the piece of paper, you know, at first there's just some
Couple
holes in the
little
paper, no
holes.
big deal.
Yeah.
You can almost seal them up if you pushed it down on the table and put the things back together.
Yeah.
But eventually.
do that for a while,
Yep.
okay,
Falls apart.
and then try to put it back together.
Yep.
It's not, and your skin's kind of the same way. You can only poke
Yeah.
it for so long before it can't put itself back together right.
On that note, and I was thinking about it, think about if you put a little bit of water across that paper with a little bit of holes in it.
Oh, it's
And
gone.
it's not, well, it won't drip through, just a few holes.
Right.
But same with
True.
your ink
Yeah.
and your skin, and you've chewed that paper up so much,
It's gonna
you
be
just put a little bit of
seeping.
water,
Yeah,
it
it's
comes
gonna be
right
seeping.
through.
Right.
It can't hold it because there's just
Well,
too
and if
much
you're-
chewed upness.
If your
Yeah.
artist does a heavily
leaking.
saturated piece on you, whether it be black and gray or color, and he's like, okay, you know, we're done for the day or whatever, it looks pretty solid, and it heals up and you got some light spots or some
Holidays.
inconsistence or some holidays or whatever, the touch-ups are free 9 times out of 10. Most artists will stand
Yep.
behind their work because, I mean, we do shit that's permanent,
Right.
so you should stand behind it.
Yep.
But like if you come back and see me, I can always make it solid or darker, but I cannot go back and make
fix a
it
scar.
lighter.
Yep.
Like if I've overworked it and caused a scar, or I've made it too dark, I can't come back and make it whiter
Yep.
or take that scar away. I've messed up.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'd
layer in
rather
a
stop
second
before
time.
and take my time and money to stand
And
behind my
sometimes
product
the
and make
piece-
it where it needs to be.
Yeah.
I'd rather be too
You know, because
gentle
after it
and come
heals,
back.
sometimes it's like a painting. You let that paint dry.
Yeah. And sometimes
you
the
do.
piece just needs
You got to
that.
come back.
Yeah.
So
Anyway.
Absolutely.
And I brought this up the last time. Is it's better off to have your tattoo artist, especially if they're working in bright colors that are close to the color of blood, to just back off and go, you know, I think I got this well saturated,
yellow, red, and orange.
and then we will, if we don't, come back in 3 weeks and
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
fix
A
that.
little point
Well,
of-
I know
smooth
people
it.
get really upset because they feel like, oh, that ink fell out. No, that's not what happened. What happened is they missed spots because they couldn't tell the difference.
They were
between
scared
the
of
ink
overworking you.
and
and
the
scarring
blood,
you.
and they did the responsible thing and said, hey, I'm going to fuck you up unless I stop.
I want to point out too that nowadays, with a lot more rotaries being prevalent and stuff, that scarring isn't as big of an issue.
No, it's not. I
As we were
agree.
saying, the old machines that could barb, and
Yeah.
people are a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a
you know,
little
it's a
harder to
learning
do it, yeah.
industry, but you know, it's
I
still
agree.
possible. But
Oh, yeah.
In part because people don't build their own needles,
there's a lot more information out
and they
there.
aren't reusing
The
needles.
technology's
Right,
better,
right.
so
Yeah, it's big.
it sucks to have to heal up one now. But as viewers watching this now, it shouldn't be a big worry on the
No,
plate.
not as
that's
big.
gonna happen,
No,
'cause
definitely not as big a thing.
We as an industry have gotten much better.
Absolutely, I agree.
Well, I think we probably beat that one pretty much to death, like a baby
we
seal.
have.
Sweet.
We clubbed it.
Don't
clubbed
club.
that.
Hey, baby seals love the club. All right, anyway.
So you've been watching and listening to Q&A in the Kitchen, brought to you in part by Skin Kitchen Tattoo, the Axiom Body Piercing Studio, and Deaf Before Decaf. Make sure to check out our merch store. Links are in the description. No matter where you're listening to this or you're watching this, you can get to that there store. 12 or so designs there, various different colors, different things that
But
you
like,
can get.
there's like
lots of
100
stuff.
different items.
Yeah,
almost.
it's
There's tons of stuff.
Yeah, there's
Check it
just
out.
endless possibilities.
Possibilities.
I turned into Daffy Duck for a minute there. Where'd you get that funny voice?
Like us and subscribe to us. If you like this episode, you made it this far, share us.
Yeah.
Next
Yeah, let your
episode's gonna be
friends know.
fun too.
Plenty of us to go around.
Probably.
Yeah, and we podcast.
So
And if you're listening to this, subscribe where you're listening to the podcast. If you're on YouTube, of course, like us and give us the old subscription and
Hit that
the
share button.
notification button.
And we'll be back.
And share with your friends, neighbors, and associates.
And your grandma. We
Yeah.
love grandmas.
We like
Yeah.
grandmas.
They're so sweet.
Until next time, here's hoping all your
Bless your little heart.
tattoos and your piercings heal with ease and without a single issue. And if you're in the Des Moines, Iowa area, we hope to see you for your tattooing and body piercing needs in the future. Have a good
nice.
day, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Be
Take
nice
care
to
of
each
one
other.
another.
Later.